We all know those GLP-1 injections work wonders, but that price tag almost gave me a heart attack when my insurance denied coverage. I was staring at a choice between paying my mortgage or paying for weight loss. Talk about a rock and a hard place. Then I found Elevate Health compounded semaglutide at just $58 with payment plans that don't require a second mortgage. Same medication, same results, but a price that real folks can actually afford. Visit joinelevate.com today. That's JOINELEVATE.com. Your wallet will be as happy as your waistline. This medication is not FDA approved.
If you love entertainment, current events, and Hollywood, don't miss Creator to Creators, hosted by the filmmaker Meosha, known for the Shudder hit documentary Horror Noir and the acclaimed film Anatomy of an Anti-Hero, Redemption. This show features interviews with filmmakers and creatives from around the globe. Join the fun with guest celebrities and gain valuable insights. Subscribe now and follow Creator to Creators.
Hi guys, welcome to Creators to Creators today. Today we have a special guest.
Hey, this is Arcade Nights.
Arcade Nights, I like that name. Um, so I love opening the show and I love going back to the beginning. I always say the beginning charts our trajectory in life, our little habits that we pick up along the way, follow us into our adulthood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. What was that like? And when did you, I don't know, get the love bug for music?
Sure. So I'm totally an 80s kid, growing up in the 80s and everything that that kind of era brings. So for me, I remember as a young kid in the 80s watching films like iconic 80s films like Tron, Rambo, Blade Runner, Lost Boys, like all of those films from the 80s. And so I think I picked up the habits of really enjoying the story, but really hearing the film, hearing the score and the music. And then from that, I just carried this idea of like, I'm going to create music like that someday, or music that reminds me of that time. And that's exactly what Arcade Nights is. It takes the idea of the nostalgia of the 80s, remembering what I felt when I watched those iconic films and growing up in the 80s, and then it takes it and puts it into this hardware that I have, and then it kind of spins a retro futuristic vibe to it. So that's really what it is to me. So I picked up the habits of loving 80s films and the scores and the hardware they used. So that's really how I got started.
I love that. And I love the 80s. 80s was like the best time, like and that's what I immediately felt when I listened to the music and I heard it. I was like I automatically kind of felt like pushed in that time. But what was the process like of creating and what is your process like when you create music?
Sure. So I'm really glad to hear that you kind of felt like you were back in the 80s when you heard some of the tracks, like whether it's my album like Cyberhack or the Neon Dreamer single or other albums that I have. And I think the reason you might feel that is because I don't emulate 80s. I use the same iconic sounds, authentic sounds, and I use all of that in hardware to recreate that vibe from the 80s. And so everything I write is all original, but I write it in hardware. So you asked what my process was. I did try to use a DAW, like the traditional digital audio workstation of a computer system, laptop with like software to kind of generate, MIDI tracks and so on and so forth. But
Yeah.
I did try it. I tried that method, and what I felt really quickly was just it didn't come through to me. So like clicking on the mouse and all that kind of stuff, like it just did not relay the vibe that I wanted or the feeling that I wanted, and it was just kind of notes on the screen. And then I said, I tried it, said I don't want to do this. It's not what I want. And then kind of walked away and thought like, how else do I do this? And that's exactly when I thought I need hardware, I need gear so that I can have tactile feel on the buttons, on the knobs, on the keys, on the pads. And that was my process. That's how I started. So legit, I sat down and watched like, I think it was like 12 different iconic 80s films.
Back to the
And then
Future.
yeah, Back to the Future, Goonies, like all of those, and just thought, okay, I need to start the process now. And then that's when I found hardware, and that's when I started. So 2 years ago is when I sat down, like binge watched all of the favorite films I have from the 80s and cult films too, cult classics, and then I used hardware to create the sounds that I have. So all in hardware, mixed and mastered in hardware, created in hardware, and so that's my process. And I do think that the hardware and how I use the hardware, it gives it a human feel. It gives it a gritty, warm, nostalgic, kind of romantic feel in some cases of the 80s.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That your process when it comes to making music. What inspires you when it comes like, I don't know, for me, I have a film background, so
Cool.
sometimes it's, different things. It could be a conversation, it could be, I don't know, just like anything, but what's something that sets you in the mood of like, okay, I have to make music now. Like,
Yeah. So great question. So I really think for me, it's a feeling or a thought that I have, and that feeling or that thought, as quick or short as it can be a full album for me. So with this album, Cyberhack, I had this idea in my head of what we're all, in my opinion, seeing and feeling today. This idea and birth and kind of drive of artificial intelligence or AI. And the understanding of that in the cyber world brought me right back to like Blade Runner in the 80s, and then so that spark of an idea, how do I relay what I want to talk about when it comes to AI? And legit, I watched Blade Runner, thought about it, thought about today, what we're doing in 2025, and started
I
writing.
like
So I
that.
had an idea in my head, a story in my head, and then I started mapping the story out through different tracks. So that's what really sparks it for me, a creative idea or thought, and that in many cases turns into an album.
Yeah, no, and I love that, and I think a lot of people, and I think that's great too. When you're not, I mean, I assume you're like you're over your own creative process. You don't have you're not like signed to a huge record label that's like you have to do it at this time, this time. You can make your own time to make music, which I think that gives you more room to create and do things that you don't really hear these days
Yeah,
coming out.
so you're right. So I am like I'm fairly small. I'm still starting out. I have a lot of fan base so far, local.
Nice.
There's some abroad as well, which is great. So I'm definitely growing. But you're right about the time frame that I have to create. So in my day job is I actually am an ethical hacker. So I actually protect industrial systems, so industrial power systems that we rely on in cities, manufacturing site, like all those things. That's what I do in my day job. And sometimes I travel to do that. So I could be, because I have hardware, I take some of it with me. I can be somewhere from an industrial plant and facility and
That's
come out of
cool.
that thinking, how do I write something based on what I just felt? And in fact, on the album Cyberhack, this whole idea of futuristic AI, which we're seeing today in
Mm.
2025,
Hmm.
and retro hackers comes through. And I actually have industrial sounds kind of peppered throughout the track. So
Oh,
it's
that's cool.
yeah, it's like a cyberpunk kind of like synthwave, I guess, track and an album. That's really what it is.
I love that, because I think that's um you don't really hear music like that today. I mean, nowadays we hear I don't mu things now are just we live in a society and time where, it's the music is not it's just different and it's not the same as it was in the 80s or it was the music's not the same as it was now. I think nowadays we're it's just you hear it's just about glorifying money or women and power and all that stuff. But it's like it's good to hear, music that kind of takes you out of the what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis and it puts you in a good
Sure.
mood. Like this music, I was like, wow, I felt really good. I felt, like you said,
Cool.
nostalgic, like 80s. You feel like it just feels like a good time. And it's like it takes you away from what's happening right now in the real world, like with
Sure.
politics and things around the world. So thank you for creating something to, I don't know, kind of distract us.
Yeah, cool. I can definitely I also align that like, music is different, it's changed. That's cool. I respect that. That's totally fine. I think for me, I want to say something in my music and just get across a feeling, but not a political statement. It's just kind of what I'm observing and also what I want to try to portray. And I think you really hit it on the head. I'm trying to aim for really positive music. However, when I create my tracks and my albums, there's definitely this ebb and flow. There's a roller coaster ride. Like as I created Cyberhack, it starts out with this kind of idea of like there's a problem we have to kind of face, which is AI today. And the album addresses through the tracks, through the sound that I create, through the lyrics I create, it creates this idea of like retro hackers in the 80s recognizing like, they're our age now or whatever, and they're recognizing that AI is controlling a lot of what we do, what we
Yeah.
feel, how we act. And so throughout the album, every track is created through its time signature, through its key mode or key, um, this feeling of up and down and back and forth. Ultimately, no serious spoilers, but ultimately leaving you on this positive, rebellious note of how do we move forward with this?
Mm.
Yeah. So Neon Dreamers is the kind of bookend to the album, and it's almost like this passing of the torch from retro hackers, from the 80s, kind of saying, by the way, here's what AI could be. You guys got this, passing the torch to like the next generation, and I think on a positive note. But there is definitely some elements in this album that I talk about that's fairly dark.
Mm.
And as I create the album as I do with most of my albums, I actually, for this one too, for Cyberhack, wrote a graphic novel which really
Oh,
expands the
wow.
universe. And so in that graphic novel, obviously there's images of what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling in the album, but the content really walks you through the dystopian future. But all the while, it's this 80s kind of like older technology being used to
Mm.
fight new evil AI?
I love that. And yeah, how do you know that's interesting about AI now? I mean, there's a lot of people, it's up for debate. It's bad and then it's good, you know.
Sure.
And it does a lot of things that, but again, I was talking to someone and they were talking about how it's like it's good to have AI, but it's also this thing of, well, then it kind of takes, if you apply it to music, you can make a song with AI and practically overnight. It's and you could put that out and that could be a hit. And it just kind of eliminates the process of making actual sounds with drum beats with, you know, um little sound like creating sounds how it used to be back in the day when this didn't exist. Do you feel like it does take I don't know, the what do you call it? The like the realness out of it, the realness when it comes to making music if when you're using AI?
For sure. So when I look at how I create music and why I create it the way I do, I'm an analog person, grew up in the digital and kind of the retro time of analog. And so we're in this digital age now, and I do think that AI can serve us. However, it's really kind of the other way around, where we're like kind of we're serving it in some capacity
Mm.
because we're giving, to your point, giving our skills to AI or forgetting our skills and having it do it for us. And in some industries that may be acceptable. And I think in music, it's really harmful if used in a way that it could be used and maybe is used today primarily. And so, from my perspective, the album actually addresses exactly this fact because I used all of my hardware to create all the tracks, everything that's in there. And for sure, someone can go create an AI version. Sure, that's not cool, but it's possible. And I think it would remove all of the things that I felt while I created. And I do think that the translation of what I felt through my music, how I created it, won't get to the listener if it's created by AI. And
Mm.
I think people know in the music industry, even in film, like you mentioned, but also in graphic design, like AI is not, I mean, it's in some cases, it is taking jobs. So that is all explored in these tracks. It's all explored. And the idea is to be careful on how it is controlling society in 2025 and beyond. I'm not going to go super cheesy on you and say it's like Terminator and like Skynet, but you know what? Like, and I
Yeah.
grew up on Terminator as well, right? And like Brad Fidel's score. But like the point is it it is going in that path. There's no question. From a military use perspective, it is going in that path
Mm.
without question.
Is there so it's no way to stop it, pretty much.
I think there is, and I think that the album really speaks to that because w
Mm.
if we pass the torch on, I would say the kind of I don't know about responsible adults we are from the 80s, but the idea of maturity and understanding and maybe strategically thinking ahead,
Mm.
passing those skills on to like, yeah, it's important to live in the now. Don't get me wrong, but like if you have a future, dude, you want to protect it. And so
Yeah.
the album addresses that, and it really addresses should we or how much do we trust or rely on AI. So trust is a big part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so true. How much do we rely on AI? And, I took a break from social media. I mean,
Smart.
I really disconnected, and just really began to live life. And I gotta say, I was like, wow, this is what I've been missing. Like, this is
Yeah,
so
yeah.
much life to be lived, and so many things that you can be inspired by and do. But I, would you, I mean, I don't know. Do you think that, you mentioned responsible
Mhm,
human beings,
mhm.
if we are,
Yeah.
that do you feel like with society now and how far we've come with everything, do you think that this younger generation is more open to hearing this and actually changing the narrative for the better?
So, yeah, it's a great question. So I think that I am not about to suggest that AI, like down with AI at all. That's not, or down with technology. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is a kid, like younger folks that are growing up with AI being a part of their life, integrated in. I understand that. It's important for them to actually use it and understand how to leverage it. But if they let it go too far, just like anything, it will kill things. And so I think that there is definitely, I hope, an ability for people to recognize the downside with anything, and AI is one major piece of that, can affect a lot of people quickly. And I think that if they recognize that, they'll be able to, like you mentioned, not necessarily disconnect from it, but hold off on it, control it. Because if you like, just like you mentioned with social media, if you didn't disconnect, it can and drive your behavior, your thoughts, your actions, your
Very
feelings,
true.
your
Yeah.
emotions. And I think that is not the case with AI or with social media. It could be with drugs, it could be with alcohol. And it's so
Mhm.
if you take the human persona and idea and psychology behind a person or a human being in today's kind of worlds, then with anything that gives them instant gratification, there will be this kind of why wouldn't I continue down that path? And I think it's a part of maturity, like again, retro hackers maturity from the 80s, knowing the strategic outcomes that could happen. It's all about how to throttle that. So I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't use it. I'm saying I think it's responsible to throttle it and use it for our purposes. And that's exactly what this album is meant to be. And it does question it and it suggests some things as well. And I also make predictions in it. And
Nice.
it yeah, and so it does align with possibly a dystopian future to some degree. It might not be like Blade Runner when you walk out your door, but the suggestions I have in here for 30 years from now is not far from some of those elements.
Wow, that's awesome. No, I love that you have this you made Neon Dreams Dreamer Dreamers, yeah, Dreamers, and I just like that title so much. I feel like it's so it's what do you call it? It's very like,
I
what does
think
that
for
even
me,
mean?
yeah,
I love it.
I kind of wrote the that track Neon Dreamers as like a rebellious anthem. I think that's really
Mm,
how I would describe it. There
nice.
is a positivity to it, how I wrote it, the key I used, all that stuff, the lyrics. And I think from my perspective, it's a rebellious kind of anthem, for youth, I think. And I think if I was back in the 80s and heard something like that, because it all uses the same, I'll say architecture or hardware and authentic sounds from the 80s, I would be pumped. So I'm hoping other people will be pumped about it too.
I love it. I'm excited for you. What advice would you give to those someone out there who's trying to, make something like this that has a bigger message, you know?
I think for me, I think the biggest message I'd like someone to take away from this conversation is to question what you're doing and why you're doing it. So question why you're doing death scrolls. What keeps you there? What does it prevent you from doing? And I think for me, it's I also did that disconnected and that allowed me to create. So the message is understand what you're doing right now. Does it make sense? What is it preventing you from actually doing in your life? And
Hmm.
think more than just now. Think more than today.
Yeah.
Like live in the now, dude, whatever you want to do. But if you think a month out, 2 months, a year out, 2 years out, where do you want to be? And you'll be able to understand the death scroll is going to keep you from your goal.
Mm,
And AI will continue to keep you from your goal unless you leverage it rather
yeah.
than it push you.
I love that. I love that message. I love asking this question, and there's no wrong answer. But the three levels of influence: money, power, and respect. And if you could choose only one of those things, which one would you choose and why?
I think respect, because I think the idea for me is power creates enemies, and I'm fine with having enemies if I'm creating something, and like haters are going to exist, don't get me wrong. But I think if you're collaborating with somebody, human beings, collaborators in music, film, whatever, I think respect is important because it's supposed to be, should be mutual. And I think that that is the most important thing because that actually allows you to achieve financial, I guess, stability and so on. Not that you would go for power, but I think the most important thing from that is respect because it will get you the things you need. And
Hmm.
of course, whatever you need, whether it's power, money, you can also use that for nefarious purpose as well. But if you're respected and you're respecting, then there's less likely to have a nefarious purpose behind either one of those.
I love that. If you could collaborate with any artist, living or dead, who would it be and why?
Oh, dude, that's seriously hard. I think that like, oh man, so Brad Fidel, so he
Mm,
wrote the track, yeah, the scores for Terminator, for example. Jan Hammer, who wrote the track and scores for Miami Vice, like all
nice.
of those. Yeah, I mean, John Carpenter, for example, fantastic.
Legend, legend.
Yep, legend, dude. Yeah, so I can go on and on, but like that's just right off the top of my head. Alan Silvestri, yeah, like who wrote the
Nice.
score for Back to the Future. Yeah, that's big time.
That's awesome. That would be, yeah, that would be pretty epic to see a collaboration with you and all these guys, especially John Carpenter. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
but I'm open to any collaboration with anybody out there who has respect for what we do and the
Yeah.
hardware and the kind of future retro thoughts from the 80s. So synthwave, cyberpunk, I'm in.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Where can people find you guys on social media to follow everything you got coming up?
Yeah, so all the usual places. I have a Gumroad, so arcadenights.gumroad.com. That's where I actually provide digital downloads. So I don't just do streaming, I provide digital downloads. So my album is in there in MP3 waveform, but also
Nice.
like art that I have created as well. Like all the things that you would expect from, I'll say, legacy kind of albums. So like the lyrics are there, like all of those additional things that we've gotten away from. So you can find me on Gumroad, but also on Spotify as an example, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. So regularly have content coming out and love interacting with folks out there.
I love it. Oh, this is awesome. And again, congratulations. And I really enjoyed the music that they sent me of yours. And it was just really fun to go back to the 80s. I always say the 80s was the best time. I wish I was born in the 70s because, I feel like that's when everybody loved each other then. But but I do like the 80s. 80s is just a special time. Definitely.
Cool. Definitely agree. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. All the best out there.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. We'll see you guys next time.